This debt limit extension is for what we have already incurred. This debt limit extension vote is about whether or not we're going to pay our bills. But I will tell you this, we're going to see how many of your folks vote for paying our bills.
The whip is so eloquent, I yield another 30 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized for 30
I'm looking forward to seeing how many of your folks are going to say, yes, we need to pay our bills. America, we need to be a good debtor as well as a good creditor. We're going to see how many of your folks vote. I got just a sneaking suspicion not going to be very many, if any. It's a good demagogic vote, frankly, ladies and gentlemen. And if we vote for it, guess what? Oh, you're for raising the debt limit without any fiscal discipline. Well, when we were in charge, when the President of the United States wouldn't let you do some of the things you wanted to do, Bill Clinton was there to veto things, we had a surplus for 4 years in a row, and we didn't increase the debt once. Under George Bush, we increased it 7 times. I yield back the balance of my time and urge a no vote on this irresponsible piece of legislation that should have been handled in a bipartisan fashion.
You know, regular order, Mr. Speaker.
I regret that we don't have regular order on the floor.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 114 members of the other party signed a letter to the leader who just spoke and asked for an unconditional increase in the debt limit. I know that's not maybe a fact they want to acknowledge now, but it is so important that we have a clear path forward on this given what the rating agencies are saying about our debt. They're saying it's not clear how we're going to deal with our indebtedness. It is so important that we set forward that when we address this issue, there is going to be the kind of spending reductions and structural reforms we need. That is going to have to be part of this discussion. We can't continue to have it clouded with this idea that we might have a debt limit increase without any of those. That's why it is so important to send this very strong signal today. I hope all of the members of your party join me in voting no on this bill. And at this time I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Michigan.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the chairman for yielding me this moment to address the American people and the students that might be watching on TV or here in the gallery. Once again, you see...
Rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, the title is amended. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Graves, to suspend the rules and pass S-1082, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Senate 1082, an act to provide for an additional temporary extension of programs under the Small Business Act and the Small Business Investment Act of 1958 and for other purposes.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House voting now on a measure to extend small business programs within the federal government that are designed to increase participation of small, innovative companies in federally funded research and development. Up next, a vote on that debt ceiling bill. The Washington Post writing, setting the stage for a long summer of heated negotiations, House Republicans plan today to reject a proposal that would increase the nation's ability to borrow funds without also making dramatic federal spending cuts. Republicans will hold a vote on the administration's initial request that the nation's debt ceiling be lifted above the current $14.3 trillion limit without any accompanying spending reductions. Both sides now recognize that such a request is politically impossible. That's in the Washington Post. Here's a reporter with more on the legislation. Andy Sullivan, correspondent for Reuters. Why have House Republicans scheduled a vote to raise the debt limit knowing it'll fail?
I think this bolsters their argument that you can't pass a debt limit increase without substantial spending cuts as they're calling for.
Well, how are financial markets expected to react if the vote fails as predicted?
I would be surprised if financial markets reacted at all. They've been very aware of the sort of politics of this going forward, and in the meantime, Treasury rates have been almost at historical lows. I think today they're at a new 2011 low for the year. So they don't seem to be concerned so far.
Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner has said that the government will default on its loans if lawmakers don't agree to raise the debt ceiling by August 2nd. Do Republicans accept this? If not, how do they counter?
There has been some discussion among some Republicans that if this August 2nd date rolls around and Treasury is out of options, that it wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world, because we would still have enough tax revenue coming in to service our ongoing debt obligations. Of course, this would mean deep, deep spending cuts in other areas of government, such as paying federal employees' salaries or paying for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. They argue that the Treasury can make this a priority, and even if bondholders missed a few payments, it wouldn't be the end of the world, because they would understand that the country is getting its fiscal house in order.
House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer met with reporters today and said that the vote is nothing more than a, quote, political charade. Why does he say that, and how is he urging Democrats to vote?
Well, 114 Democrats backed President Obama's position back in April that we needed a clean debt ceiling increase without any changes to spending. This really puts them on the spot, and Mr. Hoyer argued that this would really open them up for demagoguery and attack ads by saying they're signing on to additional debt. And so he is advising his members to not vote for the measure.
There have been ongoing debt reduction negotiations between Congress and the White House. How might this vote today affect those negotiations?
Well, I think Republicans will say this bolsters their position that you can't get a straight debt limit vote through the House. It also comes on the heels of a series of votes last week in the Democratic-controlled Senate, where they voted down several Republican budget plans that would have made deep spending cuts, as well as Obama's initial budget proposal. So this is sort of the latest in a series of sort of show votes that the people who call them up don't expect or hope them to pass.
Andy Sullivan is a correspondent for Reuters. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
A vote on that measure raising the debt ceiling is coming up next. And later in the week, members kick off consideration of the fiscal 2012 annual spending bills.
On this vote, the yeas are 387, the nays are 33. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion of the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Kemp, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1954, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1954, a bill to implement the President's request to increase the statutory limit on the public debt.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House is voting now on a measure that would raise the national debt ceiling $2.4 trillion without any spending cuts or changes to the budget process. Lawmakers calling it a clean debt ceiling bill. And because it's being considered under an expedited process called suspension of the rules, it'll require two-thirds majority to pass.
On this vote, the yeas are 97, the nays are 318, 7 recorded as present, 2/3 not being in the affirmative. The rules are not suspended and the bill is not passed. Any recorded vote or any record vote? Record vote. Were those the last votes? The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Members, please take your conversations off the floor. Please clear the well. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on the motion to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Any record vote on the postponed question will be taken later. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move to suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 1194.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1194, a bill to renew the authority of the Secretary of Health and Human Services to approve demonstration projects designed to test innovative strategies in state child welfare programs.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Davis, and the gentleman from Washington, Mr. McDermott, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and to include extraneous material on the subject of the bill under consideration. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time.
The gentleman will suspend. The House will be in order. Members, please take your conversations off the floor. The gentleman from Kentucky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume. I rise tonight in support of H.R. 1194, a bill to extend child welfare waiver authority. This bill will allow states to test innovative approaches to improve the way we protect children from abuse and neglect. In doing so, it extends authority that was in place between 1994 and 2006, but has since lapsed. Since 2006, the Department of Health and Human Services has not had the authority to approve new efforts by states to test better ways of helping children at the risk of abuse or neglect. The bill before us today would simply allow HHS to approve new waivers once again so states can test new ways of better serving children and families. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
The gentleman is correct. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the current chairman of the Ways and Means Human Resources Subcommittee, which has jurisdiction over child welfare programs, I'm pleased to co-sponsor this legislation with my friend, Mr. McDermott, a current member of the subcommittee, as well as its prior chairman. The Human Resources Subcommittee held a hearing on child welfare waivers last year, which showed the value of state flexibility in this area. Since 1994, 23 states have run waiver programs that helped inform the child welfare policy debate and, more importantly, improve the lives of children and families. 7 states have been granted extensions and have continued their waiver programs approved before 2006. This bipartisan bill before us today will allow such current waiver programs to continue while importantly providing the Secretary of HHS with authority to approve up to 10 new waivers a year. The bill before us is identical to legislation the House approved unanimously on September 23, 2010. However, the Senate did not act on that legislation before conclusion of the last Congress. This bill is supported by the National Conference of State Legislatures as well as groups active in promoting effective child welfare programs. I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record, following my remarks, copies of their letters in support of H.R. 1194.
Without objection.
Especially in challenging financial times, we must be sure that taxpayer dollars are well spent. The original 1994 law required rigorous evaluations of each waiver program, and this bill continues that requirement. This means states will have the flexibility to test new ideas, but the American people and the Congress will know if these ideas have made a difference. And because these waiver programs must be cost neutral to be approved in the first place, the Congressional Budget Office has assured us that this legislation as a whole is cost neutral. I ask unanimous consent to include the CBO analysis that affects in the record as well.
Without objection.
It's fitting that we are debating this measure in May, which is National Foster Care Month. National Foster Care Month is a time to celebrate the great work done by thousands of foster parents across the nation, and also a time to raise awareness of the hundreds of thousands of children in foster care who need a permanent home. This legislation will let states test better ways of helping these young people, including by working with families to keep kids from entering foster care in the first place. So as we recognize National Foster Care Month, this bill is a great way to work towards solutions that ensure each child has a permanent home. Child welfare legislation has often been an area of bipartisanship in this chamber, and I'm grateful that we can continue that tradition with the bill before us today. I thank Mr. McDermott for his extensive work on this bill and look forward to continuing work with him and all our colleagues as this legislation moves forward. I urge support for this legislation and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves his time. The gentleman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H.R. 1194, a bill that would reinstate authority within the Department of Health and Human Services to allow up to 10 states and Native American tribes a year to conduct demonstration projects that test ways to improve child welfare programs. I want to thank the chairman of the Human Resources Committee, Mr. Davis, for following in the tradition of the previous chairman, Mr. Linder. He was the one who worked with us last year in putting this through, and it's good to have that same thing going through. This is a rare bill. It's actually a bipartisan bill. This bill reinstates the waiver authority to allow the states and tribes to implement and evaluate innovations to improve outcomes for at-risk families and children. The legislation is cost-neutral and renews waiver authority for the next 6 years. 23 states and jurisdictions received waivers under the previous authority, which began in 1997 and ended in 2006. Although the authority for new waivers has expired, a handful of states and counties have continued demonstration projects, including Florida, Ohio, and Los Angeles County, California. The legislation also includes a new emphasis on the federal side of supporting waivers that identify and address domestic violence and related problems which lead to children being placed in foster care. It emphasizes early intervention and crisis intervention services that safely reduce out-of-home placements. The waiver authority requires states to report on the federal, state, local, and private funding sources that support various services under the demonstration project. This additional information will increase our understanding of waiver policies and increase accountability. The innovative strategies successfully tested in states under the previous waiver authority taught us some lessons at the national level that were helpful because it made child welfare policy more effective. One of the most successful demonstration projects provided support to grandparents and other relative caregivers who became the guardians of young relatives in foster care. This became federal policy when it was incorporated into the Fostering Connections Act, which passed in 2008. Since the waiver authority expired, states, service providers, and foster care experts have called for it to be renewed to allow continued innovation and evaluation of strategies to address the complex needs of children and families in our 21st century communities. Many states, like my state of Washington, can do more with limited funds than they have if they have well-defined waivers. Following a hearing last year in the Ways and Means Committee, I introduced legislation with John Linder, as I mentioned before, to reinstate the waiver authority. We did it late in the session, and a short time later the legislation passed the House. Unfortunately, it was late in the session, as I said, and the Senate was unable to take up the bill. So we thought if we put it over early this time, maybe it will be dealt with before the end of the 112th. The legislation before us is identical to the bill introduced last year and passed in this House unanimously. Mr. Speaker, my support for restoring this waiver authority is not meant to suggest that traditional federal investments are not needed in the child welfare system. We need to fully fund our child welfare programs. These child welfare waivers simply give the states more flexibility in developing innovations. Waivers are not a panacea. They are not a substitute for comprehensive solutions for the problems that remain in the child welfare system. I also want to point out that the authority provided by this bill in no way affects a child's entitlement for assistance under federal foster care and adoption assistance programs. This is important to remember for anyone comparing the waiver authority in this bill to proposals for much broader waivers in other safety net programs. Reinstating the Child Welfare Waiver Authority will allow states to continue developing strategies to improve the lives of children and families who are some of the most vulnerable in our midst. I urge a yes on this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to continue to reserve.
The gentleman reserves.
Mr. Speaker, I yield now 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson-Lee.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the distinguished gentleman, and I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection.
Let me thank Dr. McDermott, first of all, for his consistent, years-long support of our children that are in foster care, and I thank the manager and the representative of the majority for their hard work. This bill was introduced in the 111th Congress. It was passed by voice vote. It is an important amendment to the Social Security Act to renew through FY 2016, where it authorizes up to 10 states and tribes to conduct demonstration projects that serve as tests for methods to improve child welfare programs. As a co-chair of the Congressional Children's Caucus, we have worked on a number of issues through the years. We've been privileged to deal with the questions of mentoring, the question of bullying, the question of dealing with the disabled child, and yes, the question of dealing with foster parenting. In fact, some years ago, I served as the co-chair with then Congressman Mike Andrews to provide relief to foster parents by finding a process that would provide vacation time for them. I have gone to meetings dealing with grandparents who have become foster parents. And so it is important to be able to find the best practices. The waivers that will come about are designed to afford more flexibility to states in determining how to use federal funding for child welfare and foster care. The program gave more discretion to the state departments that administer child welfare programs aimed to foster innovative and effective child welfare programs. One of the issues in the state of Texas is the age-old issue of aging out. What do you do with the 18 or 19-year-old who had lived in foster care, ages out, and has no place to go? I hope in the course of this legislation we'll find that creative thinking. This bill, of course, addresses delays to guardianship for children in foster care, provides early and crisis intervention programs that are so important to improve the outcomes of the foster care system, and addresses domestic violence that results in placement in foster care. To the late Congressman Mickey Leland, I am reminded that we had a facility called the Mickey Leland Refuge or Relief Area in our district, the 18th Congressional District, that provided an emergency placement for children that had to be taken out of the home immediately. We cradled children from 0 to toddler age. Our children need us, and those who are in fact taking care of foster children need us as well. There are 423,000 children living in foster care. 26,000 of these children were from my home state of Texas. I frankly believe those numbers are even higher. But this legislation will continue a unique opportunity for states granted waivers to address the diverse needs of the cities and regions of the particular state. I can't think of a more precious resource than our children. I am very glad to be part of the Congressional Children's Caucus, and I deeply believe this particular legislation, Mr. Speaker, provides a safety net for our children. I ask my colleagues to support it, and I yield back my time.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from Kentucky.
I continue to reserve, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Washington.
Mr. Speaker, I simply want to say again, thank you to my colleague from Kentucky. This working relationship on behalf of children is one that has never gotten really political, and it is one of the nicest things about serving in Congress. So I appreciate having Jeff come on as the new chairman of the committee, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful again to acknowledge my colleague, Mr. McDermott, and his many years of work on this issue. The staff in both the majority and minority on the subcommittee have worked very hard through time on this issue to bring this bipartisan measure to the floor today. Passage of H.R. 1194 will renew child welfare waiver authority so states can again test new ways of helping at-risk youth. These waivers will let states develop new ideas and allow them to spend money on what we know is most effective, which is working to keep children safely together with their families. And with that, I urge passage of this bill and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1194? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The Chair is prepared to entertain 1-minute requests. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas rise? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Thanksgiving Day, 1944, current Mountain Home, Arkansas resident Sergeant Augie Held took a bullet in his left shoulder. Held was 22 years old at the time and a member of the 84th Infantry Division, Bravo Company. That was how Sergeant Held received his first Purple Heart. He was back to battle a mere 3 weeks later. On December 19, 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, Sergeant Held earned his second Purple Heart. Members of his company tried to take shelter from the cold in a barn where they were attacked. Bullets and shrapnel went flying, and Sergeant Held took a piece of shrapnel to his left wrist. Just 2 months later, Sergeant Held was caught in mortar fire. A bomb, or mortar rather, hit so close to him, knocked him unconscious, and a piece of shrapnel was embedded in his cheek. And that shrapnel stayed with him until he went stateside, and that was how Sergeant Held earned his third Purple Heart. Sergeant Held is one of many 1st District residents, my home district in Arkansas, who selflessly fought for America. Our district has an amazing group of veterans from World War I to the current war on terror who put America first and their own lives second. These are the people that make this country great. Yesterday was Memorial Day, a day to honor those who fought for our country and also remember the fallen soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice. My family and I spent this weekend honoring all who served, not only in the 1st District of Arkansas, but all across America. I want to thank the troops and their families for the shared sacrifice they make to our country, and a special thank you to Sergeant Augie Held, who is a living reminder of why I'm so proud to be an American. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
Gentleman, time has expired. No? For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
The House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I rise to honor the memory of Richard Pinky McNamara, entrepreneur, philanthropist, and former college athlete. Pinky passed away last week at the age of 78 after a battle with Alzheimer's disease. He attended the University of Minnesota on an athletic scholarship, eventually earning 3 varsity letters as halfback for the Golden Gophers. Shortly after his graduation in 1956, Pinky embarked on a successful career in business, buying struggling companies and turning them around. Over the years, Pinky McNamara would donate millions of dollars to his alma mater's liberal arts and athletic departments. Along with his brother Bob, another former Gopher, Golden Gopher, Pinky helped raise the funds to bring football back to the university's campus that he loved. His philanthropic efforts will leave a lasting and permanent mark on campus with the university's McNamara Alumni Center named in his honor. Pinky may be gone, but his legacy will always live on at the campus he loved. And I yield back.
Time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask permission to address the House 1 minute advice and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, today I returned from a meeting of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly in Varna, Bulgaria, where the U.S. delegation was chaired by Congressman Mike Turner, accompanied by Mike Ross, Joanne Emerson, and Jeff Miller. We were welcomed by the former mayor of Varna, Hristo Kirchev, who is a champion of freedom and democracy in a nation which since 1990 has evolved from the chains of communist totalitarianism to being a vibrant free market democracy today. Parliamentarians from NATO's 28 member nations and delegations from Russia to Montenegro were briefed on issues critical to promoting democracy in the world. Secretary General Andrews Rasmussen presented a clear report on NATO's progress in Iraq and Afghanistan while encouraging civil society movements in North Africa. Prime Minister Boyko Borisov of Bulgaria gave a stirring promotion of a missile defense system for Europe. Bulgaria is a valued partner of America. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Tennessee rise?
Request unanimous consent to address the House.
Without objection.
I've been doing town hall meetings for the last 4 months, and up to this point I've had about 12. And when Medicare comes up, people tell me, don't touch my Medicare, hands off my Medicare. And you know what I tell them? There's a dirty little secret that the Democrats in Congress and the President don't want them to know, and that is their Medicare is already changed. Because last Congress, when this House passed Obamacare, they robbed $500 billion from Medicare to pay for their government takeover of health care. Not only that, but Obamacare set up an independent payment advisory board, or an IPAC. And you know what this 15 unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats will do? They're going to ration your Medicare to cut the costs and limit seniors' access to Medicare. And you know what else happens under this plan? In a decade, there is no more Medicare because the program will become bankrupt. Now, the truth about the Republican plan and the path to prosperity. Under our plan, we save Medicare. We address the unsustainable growth rate of Medicare so the program doesn't go bankrupt in 10 years. The Democrats have no plan to stop Medicare's descent into bankruptcy, but the Republicans do. And unlike Obamacare, where you have no choice, the Republicans give you a choice. Now the dirty little secret is out there, and the real choice is in front of us. The choice is easy. Reserve my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana rise? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The CMS actuary just came out with the grim news. Apparently, the insolvency date of Medicare was just moved up 5 years to 2024. That is only 12 years from now, and will probably move up further before we get there. Furthermore, this is after $1.5 trillion has been shaved from current Medicare to extend the life of Medicare. And, as we all know, that money is already infamously booked twice, once for middle-class insurance subsidies and the other to extend the life of Medicare. The 2012 budget that passed the House with support is the beginning to the solution for this problem. It preserves Medicare for those 55 and over and reforms it to a market-based system with lots of choices for those under 55 today. Meanwhile, Democrats simply play Metascare on this issue and insist on doing nothing. Thank you, and I yield back.
Are there further one-minute requests? The Chair lays before the House the following personal request. For what purpose does the Chair lays before the House the following personal request?
Leave of absence requested for Mr. Duncan of South Carolina for today.
Without objection, the request is granted. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise? Without objection.
A lot of times our constituents are confused about the processes of this House. The one thing that we're not confused is what we all join together in unity, our patriotism and our respect and affection and admiration for the United States military. Yesterday, many of us interfaced with families, Gold Star mothers and Blue Star mothers, families who had experienced a wounded soldier or one who had lost their life in battle. It was a serious time, and I, too, commemorated and celebrated with my fellow Houstonians and Texans, even those who came up to me and said, veterans can't get jobs. And so, for me to come today and to participate in a mockery of a placed-on-the-floor vote on the debt ceiling when everyone knew on our good friends on the Republican side that it was a joke. But it was not a joke for me. I voted yes, because a responsible position is to ensure that America pays her bills, not to leave soldiers on the battlefield with no equipment, no shelter, no food, and certainly not to take away veterans' benefits, Medicare and Medicaid. Let us be responsible, and let us stand for the American people. I did that today. I yield back.
It was expired. Are there any further one-minute requests? Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rowe, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the Majority Leader.
I thank the Speaker, and we're going to spend the next hour tonight discussing basically the health care debate and what has occurred in the past 2 years here in Congress. And we've asked our physician colleagues and Health Caucus to come down and spend this hour discussing this issue. Now, I think before we start, what we need to do is to talk about why we're having this debate. And the health care debate, obviously, we needed health care reform in America. And one of the frustrations, at least I've had since I was here, was during our last Congress, we had 9 physicians in the Physicians Caucus, and MDs, and then 13 people total in that caucus, and none of us were consulted about the health care bill. And when I came to Congress, I asked myself the question, just as I was seeing a patient, what's wrong with the American health care system? And the problem with the American health care system is, today still, and getting worse, is it costs too much money to go to the doctor and go to the hospital. So when I would see patients in my office, I could see the costs ever rising. And back in the 80s, we tried plans called managed care, capitation. In our state, we tried to reform our Medicaid program. All failed to hold the cost down. The second problem I saw with the American health care system is this, is that there are a group of our citizens that didn't have access to affordable health insurance coverage. If it was affordable, we would all have it. An example I use would, let's say, a sheetrock worker or a carpenter that puts up studs in a house, or a home builder that may not have a business big enough to afford health insurance coverage, and maybe this person's wife worked at a local diner, and together they, in our area, you can get along just fine, make $40,000 a year. They couldn't afford $12,000 premiums. And the third problem I saw, which is a liability issue, is that we see ever-escalating health care costs, and I see Dr. Gingrich here with us, fellow OBGYN as I am, and we saw costs from the time I began my practice from $4,000 in 1977, which was what the malpractice insurance was at that time, to over $70,000 today. And who bears those costs? Our patients. Again, back to number one. So we began this debate, I think, which was a false premise. Basically, the health care bill was to cover those people who didn't have insurance. And this particular bill, the Affordable Health Care Act, or so-called Obamacare, did do a couple of things. One, it did nothing, or has done nothing so far. It's beginning to be initiated as far as lowering the health care costs. It has done nothing. If you look at every business around, those rates are skyrocketing and making it less affordable for us. And number two, it did increase access. And how did it increase access? At least appears so far that it increased access by massively expanding Medicaid. And the one thing about the bill that I do like, which is allowing young people to stay on their parents' health coverage until they're 26. In a subcommittee hearing, or a committee hearing we had the other day with HHS Director Sebelius, I asked her how many people would this bill cover, this 2,500-page bill. And she estimated another 30 or 32 million more American citizens. The CMS own actuary estimates, the Congressional Budget Office estimates it will add 15 million more people to Medicaid, a system that's already bankrupt in the states. The CMS actuary actually believes it will be 24 million more people on Medicaid, and you add 6 million young people to that, and really, without this incredibly complicated bill, in 2 paragraphs, you could have done exactly what they did with this bill without all this complicated issue that we're going to talk about later tonight. So we did nothing to lower costs. We did increase access by increasing Medicaid and potentially exchanges, and we can talk about that later. And then lastly, liability, which there's nothing in the Affordable Care Act for that. The other thing that is not in the bill, glaringly not in this bill, which is incredibly important, is the so-called doc fix, and so that our viewers can understand what that is. As a physician, when I see Medicare patients, the federal government pays a certain amount with Medicare Part B, and the person getting the care pays for those premiums also. In 1997, to help hold health care costs down, there was a formula put in so that if the costs went above a certain amount, the providers were cut. Right now, if we hadn't passed a temporary fix of this, the doctors would have had a 26% increase, and in 2 years, a decrease, and in 2 years that's going to be a 30% decrease in their payments. So what difference does that make if you're out there and you're a Medicare age patient, as I became last summer? So I can speak from some experience. I signed up for Medicare last July. The problem with it is there's a cost of the physician opening and practicing in their office, and we don't pay the cost of the care. And we're already seeing it in our area where very fine physicians are no longer accepting Medicare patients. We believe this could get much, much worse under the Affordable Care Act. And as the two past speakers brought out, what this bill also did, and what we're going to discuss tonight in more detail, is not just the entire health care bill, but it's going to be Medicare and one specific part of it called the Independent Payment Advisory Board. But to get to that, we have to explain the problem and why we're having this discussion. And one of the charts I want to show you here is this is why we're having the discussion right here. Is because right now we're looking at a budget. If we do nothing at all, and I use President Obama as an example. President Obama just turned 50 years of age. In 2025, he'll be Medicare age. And guess what? 4 things will make up the entire budget of this country: Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and interest on the national debt. And that could come even sooner where those things make up all it, depending on certain economic factors. So the reason we're having this, and I had a person come up to me this weekend at a Memorial Day event and said, Dr. Rowe, I'm concerned that my children and grandchildren will not have Medicare. And I said, that is exactly the reason we're having this discussion, is I have that same concern. We want to save this program for future generations. And he said, well, why don't we just cut foreign aid? And I said, that's fine. And last year we cut earmarks. That makes up only 2% of our budget. If we completely did away with all foreign aid, which some people I think would agree we need to do, but if we did that, it would only cover, it would take 15 years of no foreign aid to take care of Medicare for 1 year at today's dollar expenditures. And let me give just a little bit of history on the Medicare program, which has been very successful and very popular in this country. In 1965, it came out. It was a $3 billion program, and the reason it was because we had seniors that didn't have a way to put money back and to take care of their health care after they had retired from their work. So this program was started. Medicare Part A, which is the hospitalization part, and Medicare Part D, which is the physician part. It was a $3 billion program at that point. The government estimators said in 25 years, in 1990, this will be a $15 billion program. The real number was over $100 billion. And today's, just 20 short years later, it's over $500 billion. So this is a totally unsustainable growth rate that we have to deal with. Now, in passing, as our two previous speakers mentioned, we've cut, this bill cut $500 billion out of Medicare. It's one little thing that was left out of those talks. So this year, beginning in January in 2011, our baby boomers hit retirement age 65, Medicare age, at $3 million per year, approximately $10,000 a day. And guess what? In 10 years, we're going to have $500 billion less dollars to spend on Medicare and 35 million more people to take care of. And so you do the math. And how are we going to control this? How are we going to control these costs? Well, the President suggests a plan called the IPAB. Right now in Medicare, we have MedPAC, the Medicare Advisory Board, which gives advice to this body right here, the Congress, about how we're going to spend our Medicare dollars and suggestions. And the Congress has the right to make those decisions. Well, this Medicare board is this IPAB board that's going to be in effect in 2014. It starts this year with some funding. In 2014, 15 bureaucratically appointed people will make decisions based on nothing but cost. Let's say we spend $500 billion on Medicare, and the actual cost of providing the care to our citizens is $550 billion. We've lost our ability in this body right here to say how those dollars are spent. That board will make a decision to cut the spending to $500 billion based on nothing but cost. not quality and not access. And I can assure you, if you have 35 million more people or 36 million more people chasing $500 billion less dollars, three things happen. One is access to your doctor goes down, costs will go up, and essentially you will have with this board rationing of care. I have several of my colleagues. I'm going to stop. There are many more things we can talk about. We've got the next hour. I want to recognize my colleague, Dr. Hayworth from New York, for some comments.
Would the